I don't know if my microphone's picking this up, but there's like a family of birds that have just not stopped talking since I started filming. Before I started filming, completely quiet, and now they see a camera and they just won't stop. So apologies in advance. Hello everyone, it's the Orange Helmet Guy here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the vlog. It's a beautiful day here in Southern California and I'm excited to bring you guys my review of this Factor Ostro VAM. Let's go. So welcome. If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Harrison, aka the Orange Helmet Guy, and I live here in Southern California where I ride all through the mountains of Santa Monica and Malibu. And what I like to do is bring you guys the review from my perspective. You know, I'm not a world tour rider. I don't even race. I just like going out on the weekend and having some fun. So I'm gonna give you my perspective on how this bike feels to me. So I'll be breaking this video down into several parts. First, we'll be talking about the build of the bike. Then we'll move into the curb appeal. How does this bike look out on the road? I had a chance to interview a couple of people, so I'll show you guys that in a little bit. Then we're gonna go on to the ride characteristics. How does this bike feel coming up climbs? How does it feel on flats? And just about everything in between. What are some of the things I would change on this bike? And then lastly, what type of rider do I think this bike would be best for? First off, I want to give a big shout out to the guys at Serious Cycling for helping getting me set up with this bike. Serious Cycling is one of the only Factor dealers that I know about in the area, and they actually have a full range of demo bikes available that you guys can test ride. So if you're interested in Factor, please pay them a visit. You can actually ride the bike in this very video if you want, as long as you're a size 52. So let's get into the build and the specs that's on this bike. Again, this is the Factor Ostro VAM, Ostro being the aero frame in Factor's lineup, and VAM just really means that it's the highest end carbon that they make. It's the lightest and stiffest carbon that is available for the Factor lineup. As this bike sits right here, it's about $8,500, and with that, you're gonna get a SRAM Force kit. It also comes with the Black Ink one-piece bar and stem combo. It has a Celia Italia SLR carbon rail saddle. The wheel set on this is also by Black Ink. It's their 45s. Speaking of the wheel set, I almost forgot the Freehound subcheck. You can also customize this bike on Factor's website, which I found very flexible and super cool. I played around with it a little bit. Obviously, I picked orange, but you can go into their design studio, or I'm not exactly sure what they call it, but you can pick the colors on the bike. You could change the down tube, you could change the fork, you could change the rear seat stays, you could pick what color and material is on the logo, so I really like that. You can also pick the finishing kit on it. Personally, I would go with Shimano, but you can pick SRAM Red or SRAM Force or whatever you want. You could pick what type of wheels come on it, what type of hubs come on the bike. Actually, this bike has ceramic hubs. I forgot to mention that. So I think on the flats, that's where I really noticed that, rolling resistance was really freed up. You can also pick what type of bar stem combo you want and kind of what length is best for you. Just came from the shop and weighed this up as it sits. So that includes with the bottle cages, the pedals, and the computer mount. This bike is 16 pounds, 9 ounces, and remember that's with the SRAM Force kit. You can get this bike much lighter with going with Dura Ace or a SRAM Red. You can easily knock a few pounds off this bike and get this bike sub 15 if you wanted to. In fact, Factor on their website when you're going through the build actually encourages you and tells you that. I think Factor is one of those companies when, again, going through their site and reading through all the descriptions and the marketing, I think they're very honest and transparent. There's some other companies out there, no names to be mentioned, that I think really put a lot of fancy numbers and marketing lingo out there. Factor, I think, talks to you like you're a real human, and I really appreciate that about the company. Let's talk about the curb appeal of this bike, how this bike looks, how it looks out on the road, and what others have to say. Well, personally myself, as a creative director, I'm someone that's very much into the aesthetics and the very tiny details, and I really think Factor did a great job with this bike. From back to front, I think they proportioned this really well. I really like those big front bladed aero forks. I really like the head tube. It has a really nice substantial look to it, but it's not oversized. There's a couple of other bikes out on the market, Canyon Aero, Cannondale Super 6, that have this like massive head tube that I just think looks ridiculous and out of proportion. To me though, I think the most standout feature of this bike is that down tube with that oversized, nice block letter font that Factor uses for its typeface. And I really like how they oversized their logo and wrapped it just above and below the down tube, really making this dramatic and feeling super modern. It also has this really nice gloss carbon finish on it, and the Factor logo is this kind of chrome holographic, shiny type of effect, which I really like. For me, branding is always important as a creative director, so I really like what they did here. Moving into the cockpit of the bike, I really like the black ink one-piece bar and stem combo, although I don't think it's the most slim and lowest profile bar stem I've seen there. One of the details on this bike that I really like, which I don't know if it comes on any other bike, because when I was on Factor's website, I couldn't find the option. If you guys know, leave it in the comments below. But I really like the decal that's on the seat post of this bike. It has this kind of paint swipe effect to it. It's actually the colorway of the Israel Premier Tech team, and I really think it gives it that nice custom look. Factor out here in Southern California is kind of one of the new kids on the block. I think the rise of popularity mostly has to do with that Israel Premier Tech team with Chris Froome being on board. And then also locally here, we have Phil Guyman, the Cookie Man himself, rides a Factor as well. I had the opportunity to interview a few folks who have never seen this bike before, and here's what they had to say. With me right here, I have Ryan. Ryan and I actually kind of crossed paths quite a bit at the coffee shop at Bonneby. So I caught him at the bottom of Rock Store.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Just looking at it, I love the lines. And based on the way I watched you climb today, it's fast. Can't go wrong. It's got the force on it. I don't think
you guys can't tell on camera, but Ryan is a much more built gentleman than me with my scrawny arms, and he makes this thing look like a toy.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. If I was a small, I would hop on this and ride it, but I don't weigh 135 pounds like you do, Harrison.
Thank you. I'm a small. I'm short. I'm 5'8". How tall are you?
6'1".
Okay, so you're on a 56 then
56,
frame.
58.
Yeah, so you look like a little, this would be a toy under you.
No, it's fantastic. I love it blacked out, and I just love the Aero frame. You know, it looks fast, and it is fast.
The seat post is my favorite. Just the look of it. You know, the blue lines coming down.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, and it's different too with the way the back triangle in comparison to the front, and it's more rounded than you see, I think, on a lot of other frames.
Love the finish in different lighting. It sparkles, and in the shade, it's this really cool matte black where the Factor starts highlighting. Sick.
There you go. So let's talk about the ride characteristics of this bike. Well, I've had the opportunity to ride this bike for the last couple of weeks and get to know it pretty well, and a couple of words really stand out, and that would be confident and comfortable. For this being an all-out aero bike, I think it's very, very comfortable to climb on. I almost forgot that I was on an aero bike. There's a few aero bikes that I had in the past that were just uncomfortable to climb on. If I could think, I had a S-Works Venge at one point, and that bike climbed really well, and I actually set quite a few PRs on it. I think I was on a different quality rider back then. I was a little bit lighter, but after 6%, that Venge really felt like the back tire went flat on you. This bike, for being an aero bike, I mean, it climbs phenomenal. If you actually go on Factor's website, they kind of have this bar graph rating on the Ostro, and I think that they put comfort at like 100%, and I couldn't agree more with that. They also put the climbing ability and the lightweight of this bike. I would guess it's like 90%, and you know what? I would actually have to agree with that. So again, I really like Factor's transparency on their bike and what they say. I really think what they say, they stand behind. Coming up the climb at any gradient was no problem at all for this bike. Remember, this is a World Tour bike. Maybe not with SRAM Force, but the frame set. The frame set is a World Tour frame set. And in fact, Mike Woods just won a hilltop finish at the Tour de France on this very frame. The bike feels super efficient, and I think that's going to be one of the recurring themes here as well. When you're pedaling, it feels like it's giving you an extra 5 to 10% out of it than what you're putting into it, and I really like that. The bike feels like it just wants to propel you up the mountain and really gives you a lot of confidence when climbing. Out of the saddle, you can really feel that bottom bracket stiffness, and I do think this bike is stiffer than my BMC, But one of the things I like to do when I climb, when I'm out of the saddle, is kind of fling the bike under me back and forth a little bit. I found that my BMC is a little bit easier to maneuver than the Factor, but I really think that's because Factor is just a stiffer bike in general. The geometry on this bike also makes it a very easy climber. I noticed I was able to scoot a little bit up on my saddle a little bit more. I think most of us when climbing, we tend to scooch up a little bit on the saddle, and it feels very easy to do that on this bike. You can get your weight over that bottom bracket a little bit more. You can get those knees turning over the bike a little bit easier. So I definitely like the geometry on this bike for climbing. Descending on this bike, I also thought was very comfortable and confident and stable. It has a good amount of wheelbase to it, so it makes it very stable. I actually looked it up, and the geometry on this bike is very close to my Pinarello F10. I thought the Pinarello handled really well downhill, and so does this too. It really feels like you're on rails. You know, when I first got the bike though, and I started on it for maybe the first few days, it really didn't feel great to me, and I really couldn't figure out why. I would go down canyons that I've been down, you know, hundreds of times before, and I was missing my lines just a little bit. Well, I had a pair of Goodyear tires on that, and I finally slashed one and got a flat, so swapped it out to the Victoria Corsa tires. And actually with these tires, I was able then to hit my lines, so maybe I just like the way the Victoria Corsa tires feel over the Goodyears that came with it. I don't know if you guys saw this front tire move in that last take, but the bike's okay. I think one of the things that you guys can do to change the quality of the ride if it feels a little bit unstable is maybe try changing your tires. I find that's the best way to get the bike a little bit different of a feel. Moving on to the flats, the bike feels great. I mean, it's an aero bike. There's no question that you could really feel all of those benefits. I hate to say that this is better on the flats than it is up the climbs, because for an aero bike, this is a phenomenal climber, but on the flats, you can really feel the advantage. I found it very easy to keep speed no matter what I was doing, and for false flats as well, this bike feels extremely comfortable and confident and continues to roll along. Efficiency, again, I think is key here, where the bike feels like it's giving you an extra 5 to 10% of what you're putting into it. Out of the saddle on the flats again too, you could really feel that bottom bracket stiffness. I did a couple of sprints on it and they felt pretty good, but to be honest with you all, I'm not a sprinter, so I wouldn't be the best judge of that. Let's talk about a few of the changes on this bike and would I buy one? Well, number one, yes, I would absolutely buy one of these bikes. No question. This bike has really impressed me over the last couple of weeks, and you know what? Maybe there'll be a Factor bike in my future. A few things that I would change on this bike are those rear seat stays. I think just for cosmetic reasons, I would prefer to see those a little bit more bladed, but if that sacrificed the comfort and quality of the ride, then I would leave them alone. Another thing that I didn't particularly care for was the bar tape that's on the bike. I don't know if it's worn out because it's a demo bike, but I like something that has a little bit more sticky feel to it. Onto a little detail for me, and this kind of sounds small, but to be honest, this was the most frustrating part of this bike, is actually the rear through axle. The rear through axle is hollow, so when you're trying to get an Allen key in there, it goes in all the way, and I found that to be very difficult, especially when trying to take the back wheel on or off. The other thing is that I feel like you had to kind of twist the rear seat stay to get that rear through axle in to thread just right. On my BMC, when I put the rear through axle in, it just threads immediately without me having to kind of wiggle it back and forth. I actually noticed that also on a Pinarello I actually had to move the rear seat stay and flex it just a little bit to get the thread to catch. So on this bike, honestly, that's kind of one of the biggest problems that I had. And again, that's such a small little detail, but a small detail that was very frustrating. The last thing I would change on the bike, and it actually has nothing to do with Factor, but I would change out the SRAM for Shimano. I'm not a big fan of SRAM, I never have. I thought that the gears on this bike was very odd, and I didn't particularly care for the feel of it. The hoods on the SRAM Force kind of remind me of that like old school bus driver with a knob on his steering wheel. That's what these feel like to me. I don't know if the SRAM Red has a little bit lower profile, but I prefer my Shimano over this. The SRAM gears I also didn't care for, with a 48-35 in the front and a 10-33 in the back. I thought was a really odd combo and ratio. I don't know if that's how the bike comes or if that's just how this demo came, The only benefit that I really saw of that is I was able to keep it in the big ring a little bit more on some of the false flats and kickers that are maybe at like 5 to 6%. I was able to keep it in the big ring a lot longer, which I think helps save time and efficiency. Climbing up the hills though, I thought that 33 was just a little bit too much. It's really good for the steep stuff, so I really like having the extra gear of that 33. But the problem is from 11 to 12, it jumps from a 28 to a 33 as opposed to a 28 to a 30. So I thought the cadence at those top gears was like just really hard for me to find where I wanted to be and where I wanted to lock in at. Another thing, again, with the SRAM Force is the brakes. These brakes make a lot of noise, especially when you get just a little bit of heat into them, so I don't prefer that. So what type of rider do I think that this bike would match best? To be honest with you, any rider. Remember, this is a World Tour bike. They're racing this at the highest level. So you can really do anything on this bike, whether you're racing or a spirited group ride, whether you're a crit racer or a hill climber, you can do just about anything on this bike. I wouldn't worry if you're afraid of getting a very stiff bike. You know, the VAM model is the highest end carbon, but this bike is so comfortable that I really wouldn't worry about that. You can go out and ride all day on this. You can do centuries, you can do double centuries. I climbed 10,000 feet on this bike, no problems at all. I was comfortable all day, so I wouldn't worry about comfort whatsoever on this bike. Lastly, and more importantly, I think this bike is best for the person that likes looking at it the most. And what do I mean by that? Well, I truly believe the bike that you like looking at the most, the bike that appeals to you the most, is the best bike for you. It's gonna give you a little bit more pride in your bike. It's gonna encourage you to go out and ride. You're gonna feel proud to be on it. For example, a Colnago, right? If you told me I would PR any canyon on a Colnago, I probably wouldn't get on a Colnago. I just don't like the way they look. I get that they're great bikes and all, and they're handmade, and I know Pogacar has, you know, won so much on it, but I just don't like the look of it. If I saw that sitting on my garage wall next to the Factor, I would ride the Factor hands down every single time, and ultimately that's gonna be the best bike for you. Well, that'll do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for joining. If you guys liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. Come back and watch some more. You guys can also follow me on Instagram and Strava at The Orange Helmet Guy. Remember, if you guys are interested in the Factor bikes, go to Serious Cycling. They have a full range of demos available. And if you're a size 52, you can ride the bike that's in this very video. If you guys have any comments or questions, something that I didn't touch on, or maybe something that I got wrong, good or bad, I want to hear it all. Please leave them in the comments below. Well, it's about that time. I'm off to go meet the wife and puppy for some coffee. Thank you guys again so much for joining. Until the next time, the Orange Helmet Guy, out. Hello everyone. So I had the opportunity to interview. So let's talk about the ride care. Whoa. So let's talk, okay, so I'm gonna have to go back to build. The build. Ride characteristics, ride characteristics, ride characteristics, ride characteristics. The look. The curb appeal. Curb appeal, take 3. So the guys at helicopter. These birds. Well, there's a bee near the lens. I don't know if you guys saw that. We're gonna stop for wind. Oh, the front tire moved. Getting a little windy up here. All right, well, it's getting a little windy out here. I hope you guys aren't hearing that in the audio, but we're almost done here. Damn it. And a bee. Oh my God, I'm gonna die.